The night Emily Carter realized her life had quietly fallen apart did not come with shouting, tears, or slammed doors. It came with silence at 2:17 a.m. in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland, Oregon. Emily sat alone on her living room floor, her back against the couch, her phone face down beside her. The house was too quiet for a place that once held laughter. The clock ticked loudly, as if reminding her that time was still moving. Even though she felt completely stuck, she was 38 years old, newly single, and exhausted in a way sleep could not fix. For months, she had told herself she was fine. She had a stable job, a decent home, and friends who checked in when they remembered. But when the night stretched long and the city lights flickered outside her window, the truth became impossible to ignore. She felt invisible, not lonely in a dramatic way. Lonely in the quiet, slow way that settles into your bones. Emily had not planned to rent out the studio above her garage. The space had belonged to her ex's music equipment, boxes of unfinished dreams and memories she wasn't ready to touch. But after the breakup, the house felt too big, too empty. And the extra income felt practical. That decision changed everything. The ad went live on a Tuesday morning. By Friday afternoon, a young man named Noah Miller stood at her door, holding a folder and wearing a nervous smile. He looked younger than his age. 22, he said. A graduate student from California, moving north for school. Quiet. Polite, the kind of person who waited to be invited to sit. Emily noticed small things right away. He listened more than he spoke. He didn't scroll his phone while she explained the rules. He thanked her twice before leaving. She told herself he was just a tenant, nothing more. The first few weeks passed without incident. Rent paid on time. No noise complaints. No awkward encounters. They crossed paths in the driveway or near the mailbox, exchanging polite greetings before going their separate ways. But life has a strange way of pushing people together when they are both quietly hurting. One evening in late October, storm rolled through the city without warning. Wind rattled the windows. Rain poured hard and fast. Then, just as Emily was heating soup for dinner, the power went out. The house went dark. Emily lit a candle and stepped onto the porch, watching the rain blur the streetlights. She felt small, wrapped in an old sweater. Her thoughts louder than the storm. That's when she heard footsteps. Noah stepped outside from the studio, holding a flashlight and shielding his eyes from the rain. Looks like the whole block lost power, he said. His voice calmed. Emily nodded. Seems that way. They stood there, listening to the storm. Then, without planning it, they started talking. At first it was casual. The weather, the neighborhood. How often Portland's storms knocked out power. But minutes turned into an hour, and the conversation deepened without effort. Noah spoke about school pressure, about feeling like he was always racing toward a future that kept moving farther away. Emily spoke about rebuilding a life she hadn't planned to rebuild. She didn't mention her ex by name. She didn't need to. Noah listened carefully, not interrupting, not offering advice, just listening. When the power finally came back on, Emily felt something unexpected. Reluctance. From that night on, Noah became a steady presence, not in a dramatic way. In small, thoughtful moments, he helped her carry groceries without being asked. Fixed a loose hinge on the garage door. Left quiet notes when rent was late due to a banking issue. No rush. Hope everything's okay. Emily told herself this was kindness. Nothing more but kindness. When you're starving for it, can feel dangerously close to something else. At work, Emily functioned well. She smiled in meetings, answered emails, met deadlines. But emotionally, she felt like she was holding herself together with careful breaths. Some evenings, she would hear Noah upstairs, walking, typing, occasionally laughing softly at something on his laptop. The sounds reminded her she wasn't entirely alone in the house. She hated how much comfort that brought her. She reminded herself of the facts. He was young. He was her tenant. She was older, experienced, and responsible. Still, Her heart didn't care about logic. The shift came the night. Her phone rang just after midnight. It was her sister. Their mother had collapsed at home in Seattle. An ambulance was taking her to the hospital. Fear hit Emily so hard her hands shook. She tried to book a flight but couldn't focus. Her breathing became shallow. The house felt too quiet again, the walls closing in. She sank onto the stairs. Covering her face, that's when Noah appeared. He had heard her crying. He didn't hesitate. He sat a few steps below her, leaving space, offering presence without pressure. "You don't have to explain," he said gently. "I'm here." Something inside Emily broke open. She told him everything. The fear, the guilt, the distance. How she always felt like she was failing. Noah didn't try to fix it. He just stayed. When Emily finally stood to pack a bag, Noah offered to drive her to the airport. On the way, the city lights blurred as tears filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" He asked for not leaving when I needed someone. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "You matter, even when you feel like you don't." Those words followed her all the way to Seattle. Her mother survived. Recovery was slow but hopeful. Emily stayed for a week, sleeping in hospital chairs and cheap hotels. Noah checked in once a day, never too much, never too little, thinking of Teen Mill. Hope today was easier. When Emily returned home, something felt different. The house no longer felt empty, but it felt fragile. She noticed Noah more. The tired lines under his eyes, the way he hesitated before speaking, the respect in his distance. She also noticed herself, how her heart raced when she heard his footsteps. How she looked forward to brief conversations more than she should. Emily tried to create space. She stayed late at work, avoided shared areas, limited conversations to polite exchanges. She told herself she was protecting both of them. But emotions do not disappear when ignored. They grow quieter, heavier. One evening, while collecting mail, Emily found a small envelope addressed to her. Inside was a simple note from Noah. "I made extra soup. It's on the counter if you want it." She stood there longer than necessary, holding the paper, feeling something warm and painful at the same time. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind racing with questions she wasn't ready to answer. She wasn't falling in love. She was already standing too close to the edge. Upstairs, Noah sat at his desk, staring at a blank screen, thinking about the woman downstairs who had unknowingly become the most important part of his quiet days. Neither of them spoke about it, but both of them felt it, and both of them knew, whether they admitted it or not, that something had begun. The moment they stopped pretending this was just kindness, the silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of possibility and danger. The morning Noah told Emily he was leaving, the sky over Portland was clear and bright. It's a kind of day that feels unfair when something important is about to end. Emily was standing in her kitchen, scrolling through emails, when she heard a soft knock at the door that connected the house to the garage stairs. She knew it was him before she opened it. Something in her chest tightened, as if her heart had already received the news. Noah stood there with his backpack on, his keys in his hand, and a look that was calm but serious. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. She nodded and stepped aside. They sat at the small table by the window. Sunlight poured in, touching everything except the space between them. Noah took a breath, as if steadying himself. "I got accepted," he said. "A research program in Vancouver. Starts in a few months." Emily smiled first. The right reaction. The mature one. "That's amazing," she said. "You should be proud." He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the table. "I am. I just wanted you to hear it from me." After he left, Emily stood alone in the kitchen, her smile fading. The truth settled in slowly and painfully. She didn't just enjoy his company. She would miss him. The weeks that followed moved faster than she expected. Winter came early. Rain returned. The city wrapped itself in gray. Emily stayed busy on purpose. She picked up extra work, met friends she hadn't seen in months, told herself this was how grown people handled complicated feelings. Noah did the same. They spoke less. But when they did, their conversations were careful, meaningful, and heavy with things they didn't say. There was no dramatic moment where feelings were confessed, no crossing of lines. Just an unspoken understanding that something real existed between them. Even if neither knew what to call it, one evening in December, Noah knocked on her door again. "I made dinner," he said. "Nothing fancy, just thought you might want company." Emily hesitated. Then she stepped aside. They ate quietly, talking about small things. School, work, movies they both liked. It felt normal and impossible at the same time after dinner. They walked along the river, hands in pockets, breath visible in the cold air. The city lights reflected off the water, stretching long and soft. "I don't want to pretend I don't feel this," Noah said finally. His voice was steady but honest. "But I also don't want to make this harder than it already is." Emily stopped walking. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not a boy, but a man trying to do the right thing. "I feel it too," she said quietly, "and that's what scares me." They stood there, close but not touching, both aware of how easy it would be to step forward and how much damage that might cause. What followed was not reckless. Laughter that came too easily. Comfort that felt earned. There were no secrets, no promises, no illusions of a future that didn't fit. Emily knew the world would judge the age difference if it knew. She knew people would misunderstand. But what existed between them was not about numbers. It was about timing, need, and connection. And timing, she knew, was the one thing they could not change. As Noah's departure grew closer, the air between them shifted. Every moment felt borrowed. Every goodbye lingered longer than necessary. On his last night in Portland, the rain returned, steady and quiet. They sat in the living room, the house dimly lit, surrounded by the ordinary things that had somehow become part of their shared story. "I don't regret this," Noah said. Emily shook her head. "Neither do I, but I know when to let go." Didn't speak much after that at the airport the next morning. Emily walked with him to security. Travelers rushed past them, lives moving forward without pause. Noah turned to her. "You helped me more than you know," he said. "You reminded me that being present matters." Emily smiled through the ache in her chest. "You reminded me that my heart still works." They hugged longer than friends, shorter than lovers. Then he walked away. Emily watched until she couldn't see him anymore. The weeks after were harder than she expected. The house felt quiet again, but different. Less hollow, more complete. She returned to routines, found comfort in small joys. Slowly, carefully, she built a life that didn't depend on someone else filling the empty spaces. Months passed. One afternoon, message appeared on her phone from an unfamiliar number. "Made it through my first year. Thought you should know." "You're well," she smiled. "I am," she typed back. "I hope you are too." That was all. Years later, Emily would tell this story not as a regret, but as a chapter. A reminder that connection can appear when you least expect it. And that not every meaningful relationship is meant to last forever. Some people arrive to hold you steady during a storm. Then they leave. So you can learn to stand on your own again. And that, Emily believed, was its own kind of love.